Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A disciplinary committee has found a former Windsor assembly plant nurse committed professional misconduct. We have those details tonight. Plus, an organization has been granted thousands of dollars. That's to help support child victims of gun and gang violence as well as human trafficking. And a Rose City rewind that packs a punch in the history books. A look back at one of boxing's most important pieces of memorabilia. The College of Nurses of Ontario has found a local man guilty of inappropriate touching and advances. This happened while working as a nurse at the Windsor Assembly Plant. Dawson Chen joins us with more. Dawson, what consequences is this man facing?
Meg, this individual must permanently resign as a member of the College of Nurses of Ontario. The CNO's discipline committee ruled on Monday that the accused did indeed commit professional misconduct in multiple incidents from June 2020 to March 2021. Windsor Assembly Plant has a team of registered nurses who provide health care for plant workers. The subject of the hearing was a member of that team. The allegations involve him rubbing a female patient on her shoulders, back, and arms in a non-clinical manner. He reportedly tried to get her home address and texted her personal phone number. The college also found that this individual engaged in dishonorable conduct with female nursing colleagues. He made unwanted comments about friends with benefits and comments about women's appearances and bodies.
And what level of experience does this individual have as a nurse?
Meg, this is a man with many, many years in nursing. He first registered with the CNO in 1982. He was also registered as a nurse in Michigan. He resigned his Ontario registration in December 2021, but now, with the outcome of this hearing, he's agreed to make that resignation for life.
And what other penalties has the college handed down to this individual?
The discipline committee has ordered him to appear before a panel for an official reprimand. The CNO also had the ability to fine him and order therapy, but these options were not exercised. His former employer, Stellantis, has previously declined to comment on CNO proceedings.
Well, thanks so much for that, Dawson. That's the CBC's Dawson Chen reporting live. A local organization is hoping it can help more victims of gun and gang violence, as well as human trafficking. The province gave the group a little more than $137,000. The CBC's Dale Molnar has that story.
The money is going to the Windsor Essex Child Youth Advocacy Centre. The centre opened in 2018. It provides a comfortable place for children up to the age of 18 to share their story about crimes they have witnessed or been victims of. It's a space that's more inviting and less intimidating than a police station. Part of the money will go toward an educational program to make people aware of the signs of human trafficking.
So we will be listening to the survivors of human trafficking, developing material and resources, and we'll be distributing to any within the community so that all of us are aware of the warning signs and signals, and how can we help a child and youth if they're being groomed or lured into human trafficking.
The Youth Centre will be partnering with the Windsor Essex Counter-Exploitation Network for the Human Trafficking Program.
Especially with the online world, we're seeing exploitation just be more and more rampant. Unfortunately, a lot of young people, they're not fully aware of what's on the other side. And with that, they just become increasingly more vulnerable.
The centre is also partnering with the Social Justice and Legal Services Program at St. Clair College. Some of this new money will also be used to develop a mentoring program for youth victims of crime. The faculty and students will be formulating a program in the coming weeks where it's anticipated students will train to be mentors.
While we were working with children and families, we realized a lot of the families don't have a positive role model in their life. And sometimes children, the youth, feel lonely, and that has been a lot of the times that they move further into the justice system without proper peer support.
MPP Andrew Dowie says the money comes from a $1.4 million program that is distributing funding to several municipalities for similar programs.
What we want to do is, on one hand, is help those that are already experiencing violence, but also preventative work to help those from all quarters get the kind of support they need if they're finding themselves in a vulnerable situation where they may be susceptible to being experienced with criminal behavior.
Dowie says the cap on funding for any area is $150,000, so the Windsor area is getting one of the larger funding grants. He couldn't give an exact date as to when the youth center will receive the funding, but says it is coming soon. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
More kids are being surrendered to the Children's Aid Society by parents in hopes of being able to access better supports. But wait lists are long, and with limited foster homes, it means kids with complex needs are sometimes staying in hotels. It's a story CBC Windsor extensively followed last fall, that issue reaching Queen's Park yesterday, with Windsor West NDP MPP Lisa Gretzky bringing it up at question period. The minister responsible for mental health and addictions responding to Gretzky, saying the government has invested $520 million annually in supports for kids with complex needs. The Children's Aid Society responding to that claim on Windsor Morning today.
And those investments, they certainly haven't trickled their way down to Windsor-Essex area, and I would argue are not the kinds of investments or the kinds of interventions and programs that will address the crisis for these children and youth that we're serving. And so as the parent, guardian of these children and youth, we're saying this is a colossal failure of the system. And it's actually, for me, it feels like a charter right issue. Children with disabilities have the right, not an earned right, not a right that they have to prove, but a right to have the access to the services, the supports, proper placements that they need.
Two minor hockey associations in Windsor, Essex are exploring a merger due to declining enrollment since COVID-19. The Windsor Minor Hockey Association and the LaSalle Minor Hockey Association are looking at joining forces. The combined leagues would start in the 2025-2026 season if approved. They say the possible merger is also a push to be more competitive outside the league they both play in. Windsor Minor has about 730 kids enrolled and LaSalle about 900. There's also talk to create one association that can compete with anyone across the province. LaSalle continues to move forward with an outdoor skating trail that will cost nearly $9 million. This is a rendering of what part of that skate trail, walking path, and garden will look like. It'll be located at LaSalle Landing on the town's waterfront. This week, Town Council approved a developer to take on the project. It's unclear when construction will start and how long until officials think it will be open to the public. The federal government is making a huge investment for a major nuclear expansion in Ontario. The funding will help supersize Bruce Nuclear Generating Station, which is already one of the largest plants in the world. The federal energy minister says it's a big step toward Ontario meeting its clean energy goals.
The requirements on the grid are significant. We will need to double or more the amount of electricity we produce by 2050. The good news is that Canada has a head start. We already have a grid that is about 80% non-emitting. This is true in Ontario, and it is very much because of nuclear power.
The $50 million investment will bring the province's nuclear output to 4,800 megawatts. This will be the largest Canadian nuclear project in 30 years. Well, it's been 4 years since we've been able to say today is February 29th. And for some people in Ontario, that means they've waited 4 years to celebrate their birthday on the actual day. Windsor Morning host Amy Dodge spoke with two local women, one who is turned 15 but is going on 60, and the other who is 7 entering her late 20s.
I was turning 8 years old. I was in a classroom with a teacher whose daughter was going to turn 2, and she said, "There's somebody in our class who's going to have a second birthday also. I wonder who it could be." And I was putting my hand up and guessing everybody else because somehow I didn't know that yet. So that's how I found out.
Yeah.
It turned out that it was me.
Were you surprised? Do you
Oh,
remember your
yes.
reaction?
Yes, I was like, "Oh, what is this? What is this strange thing that's happening to me?" I didn't know.
Any idea why your parents never told you?
They tended to shelter me a lot from things that might, harm me or maybe upset me or whatever. So I kind of put it up to that.
Are there any downsides to having a February 29th birthday, Lexi?
I think the only trouble I've had is like insurance or people tell you your birthday's not real.
Colleen, you've had that?
I have, yeah. Even just doing things online and it asks for your birthday and it'll just say, it's like, no, that can't be. Although once it added the year, then the computer will figure it out. But many times it's like, no, that's not your birthday. That's not real.
Must be frustrating. I know some people who on their birthday will write down, they get their free Starbucks. They get maybe a discount at a restaurant. Are you able to cash in on those offers?
I did so on the way here this morning.
Where's your Starbucks?
I left it in the car. It was still too hot to drink.
What about you, Lexi?
Yeah, Sephora, they actually let you claim your birthday gift too. I've had a few places that don't, though.
Oh.
Or like when I turned 19 and drinking, we had to wait to go out on like March 1st to get a drink because they wouldn't claim my birthday as the 28th when it was the 29th. So
You relate, Colleen?
Well, I don't think I had that same experience, but I could see how that would be.
Yeah, a little bit of a letdown.
I think so.
Yeah.
it is a letdown, yeah.
If you're one of the millions of Canadians earning a fixed annual salary, you're likely not getting paid for the extra day of work during leap years. The average salaried worker may be losing out on hundreds of dollars, while employers collectively save billions. Philippe de Montigny reports.
In the heart of Toronto's financial district, many who earn a yearly salary are not too happy to find out they aren't getting paid for the extra day of work during leap years.
I think it's pretty brutal. I know for myself, if I'm working, I want to be paid. Like, you still have your expenses for that day. I think we should be compensated.
Some argue it's a give and take. Being salaried comes with other benefits and more flexibility.
I'm not necessarily a 9-to-5 kind of gal, even if that's what my contract says. The reality is I'm expected to yield a certain amount of work, and that's what I'm getting paid to do.
It's a quarter of a day every 4 years, so that doesn't really kind of move that bottom line for me a whole lot.
But for some, it can add up to hundreds of dollars. Crunching the latest figures from Statistics Canada, the average salaried worker is losing out on $351 for a typical 8-hour day. And with more than 6.5 million people earning a fixed annual salary, about a third of Canada's workforce, employers collectively save more than $2 billion.
We use the term wage theft because it is a form of theft that workers are experiencing.
And it's a much broader issue the Workers' Action Centre is looking to tackle, from unpaid public holidays and overtime to withheld employee benefits.
This is a real crisis in Canada, and people are feeling it more because every dollar counts when the cost of living is as high as it is now.
People who receive annual salary will usually spend more hours of work in a year than what they're actually paid for. It's kind of expected from them. It's included in their salary.
Some contracts include pay for leap days, but it's still pretty uncommon. It's ultimately up to employers, and currently no law forces them to do so. Philippe de Montigny, CBC News, Toronto.
Tonight's Rose City Rewind, a story that was done in 2007 on arguably one of the most important pieces of sports memorabilia at the time. Boxing gloves that Joe Louis wore for his first fight against German heavyweight Max Schmeling. The gloves belonged to a Windsor man who was donating them to the world's largest museum. The report done by former CBC Windsor reporter Tom Taylor.
These are Joe Louis's boxing gloves from his first fight with Max Schmeling on June 19, 1936 at Yankee Stadium.
They seem very lightweight. There's not much to them.
Extremely light, yeah. In the late 1990s, my aunt gave them to me with one request, and that was just to do the right thing with them. And the right thing as far as I was concerned, they had had them for 62 years. They didn't try to sell them. I didn't see where it was meant for me or anyone else to try to sell them.
Now, Windsorite Ken Milburn is going to give them away to the Smithsonian Institution.
I'm not losing possession of them. And the reason I say that is I know where they are. I know how they got there. I'm donating them really on behalf of all the families of my aunt and uncle to the Smithsonian in memory of my aunt and my uncle.
And how Milburn's uncle, Windsorite Earl Cousins, got them in the first place is an interesting story. Cousins was a good friend of John Roxborough, who was one of Joe Louis's first managers. Cousins and Joe Louis were close friends as well.
When the fight was over and they cut the gloves off, they cut them off and Joe threw them to my uncle and said, "Here, cuz." He caught him and he kept them.
The Brown Bomber didn't make it through the 12th round that night. For the first time in his career, Joe Louis was knocked out.
If Joe Louis had fought Max Schmeling, won that fight, the gloves would have no significance. The significance is there were two fights.
After that first win, Schmeling returned to pre-war Nazi Germany like a conquering hero, much to Hitler's liking.
For that point in time, until that second fight was over, and a short period after that, Joe Louis wasn't a black man anymore. He was an American.
2 years later, Louis and Schmeling fought again.
Another jolting right, and Max goes down for the third and last time.
Joe Louis went on to become an icon to black America. And next week, the gloves he wore during one of America's most important sporting events go from their Windsor home to the Smithsonian Institution.
Lots of sun today, making it hard to tell if it's warm or cold outside, especially after the confusing weather we've had. And it's going to get even more perplexing. Your weather forecast coming up. Paula, it's just a cycle of freezing and thawing and freezing and thawing. This morning I had my hats and mittens on, and it looks like in the next few days I might need to break out some shorts and maybe some sunscreen.
Yeah, and isn't it wild that yes, freezing, thawing, but it's the freezing are very short.
Yes.
And it's the thawing, the days that go on longer, which you wouldn't necessarily expect in February, right?
And I'm pleased about that part.
Yes.
But, you know,
Many, I think,
nonetheless,
are.
when those temperatures are so chilly, it's hard to adjust all the time.
Yeah, for sure. It can be. And here we are. And now we're going to be going in the other direction again. At least we had the sunshine for today. And you know what? We'll have some for tomorrow as well, at least for a good portion of the day. But let's just look at then your sunrise for tomorrow, just after 7 o'clock. Sunset tomorrow, 6:22. Keeping in mind that we're not too many days away. Tomorrow we start the month of March. And it's the 10th of March where we're going to be moving those clocks, bringing forward. So not too far when we're going to see these really changing up significantly. For now, the hours of daylight, 11 hours and more than 15 minutes. And so that's what we get to enjoy. I'm showing you these temperatures and kind of giving you more of a national perspective, even international. We're looking at a few U.S. numbers here too. But just to kind of show you how it's sort of hugs the international border in terms of where the coldest air is and then where the milder stuff is. Now, Vancouver is an exception at 5, St. John's at 7, similar to here to Chicago. But look what's happening. Okay, Windsor, we're just trying to nose onto the positive side of things too, as more of a southwesterly flow will begin to kick in, and that's going to start pulling those temperatures up. So look at the contrast between us and Kitchener, almost 10 degrees there. Winds still from the north. Chatham-Kent, you're getting southwest right now. As that shifts, there is going to be another system making its way in, and so that's going to pose some changes. So we go from the clearer skies that we'll have tonight, and then as this is continuing to materialize and certainly bringing some lightning strikes there into Texas, it's going to be pulling in our direction, and that's why tomorrow for the second half of the day, we'll see some increase in cloudiness. It's not there yet at 7 a.m. We're not worrying about it, but towards the afternoon hours, cloudiness, and then into the later evening and overnight, and even into Saturday morning, the chance of seeing some of these light showers passing through our skies. A lot of it stays south of the border, but just be prepared for a stray shower coming on through too. And there we go. Overnight temperatures, they will dip a little bit before they start to climb, but freezing, maybe -1, not too bad, right? And 8 degrees for the high tomorrow, certainly that's not too bad, even with some showers. Okay, are you seeing these numbers? You're not wrong about flip-flops and possibly shorts. I mean, who knows?
I know. You can't get around it. I mean, with a weekend like that, maybe you're out in the yard a little bit, get those shorts on, some sandals.
Hello, March.
Thanks so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
Ever heard of a jet suit race? The first one ever just happened in Dubai. We have the details coming up after the break. Former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney has died. He was 84 years old. His daughter Caroline Mulroney shared the news late this afternoon on social media. Mulroney was Canada's 18th Prime Minister. His daughter says he died peacefully, surrounded by family. The Trudeau government released the long-awaited details today of its National Pharmacare plan. Phase 1 will cover a number of birth control and diabetes medications for all Canadians. The Liberals and the NDP struck a deal on Pharmacare last week, a key condition of their supply and confidence deal. Marina von Stackelberg reports.
This is how I give myself insulin.
12-year-old Raina Smith needs a digital monitor to watch her blood sugar and a pump to deliver insulin. Thousands of dollars in medical supplies for her type 1 diabetes, paid for through her parents' private health insurance plans for now.
It makes me always worried about in the future because before all these medications were going to get covered, when I become an adult, how am I going to cover this? Do I have to choose a job based on what covers and what benefit cover insulin, cover my pump?
Worries Canada's health minister says she won't have any more. He's now introduced long-awaited pharmacare legislation. It commits the federal government to foot the bill for diabetes medication and devices, along with contraceptives for everyone. It does not promise full coverage of all drugs.
I think the question that Canadians are going to ask, once they get an opportunity to look at that data, is to say what is the most effective, efficient model to get to full coverage, to make sure that everybody can afford their medication, and that we choose the system that's right for that.
Ottawa will also create a national list of essential drugs that it may eventually cover and develop an agency to bulk purchase medication, all within 1 year of the legislation passing, which it likely will with the support of the NDP, who push the Liberal government to bring in pharmacare and want to see all necessary medications covered.
It also sets a structure for builds a foundation for further expansion down in the future for governments that want to go there, and of course the New Democrats. If we're government, we would want to go there.
Holland, wary to give a cost estimate for the two types of drugs, was pushed by reporters.
You are the Minister of Health. This is a question you knew you were going to get coming out today.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So what are we looking at here?
Maybe $1.5 billion. Like, I think it's, the question is it going to be lower than that? Is it going to be a little bit higher?
The health minister says Canadians could start getting their diabetes medication and birth control paid for as early as next year. But to get there, he'll first have to negotiate funding deals with the provinces and territories. So far, Alberta and Quebec have both said they're not interested in the plan. Marina von Stackelberg, CBC News, Ottawa.
Statistics Canada has released its GDP numbers for the fourth quarter. It's the broadest measurement of everything this country produces. StatsCan reports the economy grew at an annualized rate of 1% as high interest rates weighed on growth, but not enough to push it into recession. StatsCan says growth in the fourth quarter was driven by a rise in exports, while housing and business investments both fell. That follows a third quarter decline of 0.5% in real gross domestic product. Outside of 2020, when the pandemic took a sledgehammer to the economy, StatsCan says growth last year was at its slowest pace since 2016. It's not a bird, a plane, or even Superman. It's 8 humans taking part in the world's first jet suit race in Dubai. The event was organized by the company that first launched these special suits in 2017. All 8 participants are trained pilots, so not something to try at home. The suits are fitted with 5 gas turbine jet engines. The 1,500 horsepower helps launch the wearer up into the air and achieve speeds of more than 120 kilometers per hour. The company says their jet suits are capable of flying over all kinds of terrain. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. You can also download the CBC News app for stories that matter most to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.